So you think 3 Mile Island was the only nuclear meltdown in U.S. history? Well, then you haven't heard about the accident that happened at the Rocketdyne laboratories here in Southern California in 1959. Why does that matter? Because now one of the nation's largest home builders wants to build hundreds of homes and apartments near that site. Anna Cuevas goes to Simi Valley to take a look at this high-stakes controversy.
Tucked between the hills overlooking Simi Valley is Runkle Canyon. It's surrounded by more than 1,000 acres of something very valuable in Ventura County, undeveloped land. But a few months ago, a fence went up. Resident Patricia Coriel wondered if this was the long-anticipated development they'd heard about 2 years ago.
There was a lot of rumors at that time saying they may be putting a golf course in there, they may be putting a development in there, and I thought, okay, great, my property value will just benefit from that. So there was no concern.
Coriel moved to Simi Valley less than 5 years ago. She had no idea at the time that the land was at the center of a serious environmental debate.
When I first moved to Simi Valley, I had never heard of Rocketdyne or the Santa Susana Field Lab. I knew nothing about it.
High above Runkle Canyon is Rocketdyne, the #1 designer and producer of rocket engines in the nation. Many of those engines were tested here at the Santa Susana Field Laboratory. When Coriel heard about Rocketdyne during a neighborhood meeting, she decided to do her own research.
I was horrified. I found out about the chemicals first.
For decades, environmental groups have charged that contaminants from all that testing have tainted the water and the soil. So is this a safe place for a development? KB Home is a Fortune 500 company, one of the largest home builders in the country. KB wants to build more than 400 houses and apartments in Runkle Canyon. The question residents are asking is, what's going to happen when all that settled dirt is stirred up again?
But concerns about construction go beyond just wondering what may have seeped into the soil and into the water. The site is actually the location of one of the worst nuclear disasters in U.S. history. In 1959, there was a partial meltdown of one of the reactors, and 40 years later, the lab is still in the process of an extensive cleanup that's costing billions of dollars.
The accident occurred inside this building. It's believed more radioactive material was released here than at 3 Mile Island, a nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania that experienced a disastrous meltdown in 1978. So why did the city of Simi Valley agree to the construction? According to Councilwoman Barbara Williamson, when KB Home presented the project, it included a report which stated the land was safe.
99% of the time, I would think that when you're a developer and you're going to buy a piece of property, you do your due diligence before you buy it.
Williamson wonders if residents are really concerned about the contamination or if it's just a case of NIMBYism, not in my backyard.
People, they live up in that area. It's open field, it's open space, and the last thing they want to see is houses built on it. And I can't blame them. I guess I would be the same way. But, it's our job to make sure that we have housing for everybody, not just the elite few, and forget about it.
There's a lot of land in Simi Valley that can be developed that would not even be a question as to whether or not it was safe to develop. The risk here is all that there are chemicals, that there is radiation. So why develop this land?
To get the word out, Coriel has set up a website, StopRunkledyne.com, a combination of Runkle and Rocketdyne.
I am not an Aaron Brockovich wannabe, a tree hugger, or an environmental activist. I've never been involved in anything like this before. When I found out actually about all of the information that I ultimately discovered, I really couldn't understand why Simi Valley was not up in arms.
So she decided to distribute flyers inviting all of the neighbors to the next city council meeting with KB Home. Councilwoman Williamson says she was surprised to see so many people show up, especially since the issue had been discussed before.
I was probably one of the most upset councilpersons, only because the residents were there kicking and screaming, saying there's a problem here. And my only problem was, where were you 3 and 4 years ago when we were doing the environmental document?
Nevertheless, there were enough questions raised by residents that the city agreed to delay construction, and the council has asked 3 different government agencies to conduct additional tests.
What we did was we outlined in the letter all the concerns that were brought forth, not only by the residents, but by some of the newspaper articles that were being written.
She's talking about articles written by reporter Michael Collins for the Los Angeles City Beat. For the past 8 years, he's covered Rocketdyne and Runkle Canyon.
Folks will say that somebody like me who reports on stuff like this has an agenda. I don't have an agenda. If there's a public health threat looming in Southern California, where I'm generally reporting right now, I want to get the word out as a newsman, not an activist.
He's posted his articles as well as additional information on his website, enviroreporter.com. So is the land a safe place to build hundreds of homes and apartments? That's the million-dollar question. Last October, a report was released by the Santa Susana Field Laboratory Advisory Panel. The independent panel of citizens and scientists, set up in the 1990s by the local government, studies the impact of Rocketdyne on the surrounding areas.
They found that between 65 and 1,800 people got cancer from that specific meltdown event within a 62-mile radius of this property. So I think it would behoove the state to do a much more in-depth epidemiological survey of this area.
What we would like is to have a full characterization done on Runkle Canyon of both the radioactive and the chemical profile done on it, so we can see what we're dealing with there, because the fact of the matter is, at this point, we do not know.
What if something comes back in that report that shows that it's not safe to build on that particular site?
I know this council person wouldn't approve to go forward, and I have to believe that my colleagues would say, no, we're not going forward. I mean, who'd want to put anybody in harm's way?
KB Home turned down our request for an on-camera interview, but a parked bulldozer sits on the site waiting for the green light. And it's important to note that Rocketdyne continues to function, but it no longer conducts nuclear experiments.
Is there anything in the agreement that allows the city council to pull back out?
Oh, sure. I mean, let's face it, even though we went forward and we said we cleared the environmental document, I'm sure that if they have left something out of that environmental document, it gives us the wherewithal to go back and say, wait a minute, this isn't a clean environmental document.
There's just intuitively no sense in developing land within 1.5 miles of the worst nuclear accident in the United States. Because what's next? 3 Mile Island Resort? Chernobyl shores? It doesn't make any sense.
For now, everyone is waiting to hear what the additional tests will reveal. And depending on the findings, either hundreds of families could be moving in, or the land could remain as is, undeveloped and deceivingly peaceful. I'm Ana Cuevas for Life and Times.
So what do you think of the proposed development for Runkle Canyon? You can let us know by going to our blog. Just go to kct.org and click on the Life and Times blog.